What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about Legion of X number 2 by Cy Spurrier and Jan Bazaldua. And in this video, what we're going to be breaking down is why the new X-Men villain, Mother Righteous, is going to be one of the biggest problems that Krakoa has to deal with, and what she's already done to sink her teeth into Legion's Legionnaires. And we're also going to be doing some musings about what's going on with the skinjacker known as Switch. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, let's hit that intro.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
Okay, so when last we left off, we were introduced to the character Mother Righteous. She is, for all intents and purposes, a wayward deity, something that is an incredibly powerful being, but lacks in some of her power due to a lack of followers. This is something that's not necessarily completely spelled out, but one can tell this is very likely the case, as the idea of gods and how they work in the Marvel Comics universe has been brought back under the microscope very recently. Now, we've talked about it in the past with videos that I've done, in the earlier days of this channel for Thor, when we were talking about the Thor God of Thunder series, when he was going against Gore the God Butcher. One of the things that always comes up is that gods only have as much power as they have people who believe in them. Even something that Dr. Nemesis brings up even grudgingly, considering that he doesn't really believe in the metaphysical, he believes in science. But he talks about how the input that gods thrive on is faith, and the more faith a person has in a one particular god, the more power that god would have, and the more that god would be able to manifest themselves in the real world. And right now, Mother Righteous kind of seems to fall into one of the earlier categories. She's not able to manifest herself in the material plane, but she is able to manifest herself in the astral plane, which is where we've seen her as of late. Dr. Nemesis even talks about why there are certain gods, namely Thor and Loki, Hercules, and various other figures of the various different mythologies that we see on a regular basis in Marvel Comics. The reason why they are able to manifest themselves in the real world and don't really seem to have the issue of having to rely purely on faith to have power. He even talks about what would happen if suddenly everyone stopped believing in Thor, that this is something he wants to look into. What would happen if the entire world just simply forgot Thor existed? Would he himself cease to exist? Something to think about. I don't think that this is any kind of a dig at whether or not Thor and the Legion of X or Krakoa or whatever are gonna cross paths with one another anytime soon, but it wouldn't be that far outside of the realm of possibility considering what the Legion of X are dealing with now. Right now, they're already having to track down a wayward god, and that wayward god is already popped up on their doorstep in the form of Mother Righteous. She's already planted her hooks inside of Legion, showing him a potential future thanks to hijacking Blindfold's ability to see potential futures. And in one of these potential futures, Legion has surpassed his father, Charles Xavier. Something that has kind of been weighing on his mind lately is, Charles has been pretty much a shitty father to him, and the relationship that Legion has had with Professor X has been tumultuous at the best of times, but right now, the thing he wants is to try and prove his worth, and that's primarily what Mother Righteous is preying on, is his desire to prove himself to everyone on Krakoa, to prove that he has the ability to control his power and the ability to lead the mutants into the future that Charles never could. And we see at a point that Blindfold sees a potential future, one where Legion seemingly is the leader of the Quiet Council, or what is ever left of the Quiet Council. We don't really see any of the other seats, typically the place where Charles Xavier would sit alongside, what was once the seat that belonged to Magneto that now belongs to Hope Summers, as well as the seat that once belonged to Apocalypse that now belongs to Destiny. We see in their respective places that Nightcrawler has taken over Hope's spot and is surrounded by little imp-like devils that look not unlike himself, giving us an idea that maybe he's leaning into some of the more supernatural connections that he has had over the years. And we also see that Blindfold sits in place of Destiny, and oddly enough, not only is she sitting in Destiny's place, but she is also wearing what seems to be a part of Destiny's mask. This is interesting just for no other reason than the fact that Destiny and Blindfold have always had a bit of an interesting connection. While it's always been nebulous as to exactly what relation Destiny has with Blindfold, during X-Men Legacy 233, it was seemingly implied that Destiny is Blindfold's great-grandmother, which would explain Blindfold's powers and abilities, and why her and Destiny have always kind of had this really, I don't know, unspoken thing between them, so it would make sense. Now, once again, as to who else would be on this Quiet Council in the future, it's hard to say, and as we can see in the background, Krakoa itself even looks a little bit different than normal. Legion himself even looking different, speaking very familiar words that were made famous by his father, Charles Xavier, but saying them with a much more ominous tone, with his face on fire and almost representative of what we would normally see out of the Zorn brothers. Blindfold doesn't allow Legion to see much further into this potential future because as all this is going on, she sees yet another thing, and this kind of ties us back into the whole Skinjacker thing that was brought up in the previous issue. Before we jump into that, I want to talk just a little bit more about what's going on with Mother Righteous, because this character, she is offering a lot of things for what appears to be very little. She wants to give Legion all of the power he could ever possibly want to set him up to become the leader of the future of Krakoa, but while Legion thinks that what she's going to want in return is his immortal soul, that's not what she wants at all. She just wants him to have a little faith in her, to remember who it was that gave him all of this. And more simply put, she says all you have to do is thank me. Going back to what we talked about earlier with gods and belief, the fact that she wants someone to have faith in her, to believe in her, because that is going to give her more power. And while it is brought up that having fewer followers isn't necessarily going to give a god that much power, but having a follower as powerful as Legion could potentially spread that faith even further. Legion isn't the only one Mother Righteous is looking into. It seems she has her sights set on the entirety of the Legion of X. As we see towards the end of this issue, she's also reaching out to Banshee, who has been through a lot as of late. He was not only killed during the events of Ten of Swords, but he also, after being resurrected, and mostly kind of seeming like he was getting his life back on track, he ends up meeting up with his ex-boo-thang, Moira McTaggart, and she kills him and wears his flesh and his face as a mask just so she can infiltrate Krakoa. He's dealing with some stuff right now, and he's not okay. Not at all. And he doesn't really try and put on a face as though he doesn't, though when we first see him, it does kind of seem like he's not himself, and there's a good reason for that. The question is, what is she going to offer Banshee? Is she going to offer him some semblance of his old life back? Is she going to be able to give him some semblance of Moira McTaggart? Is that what's a part of her bargain that she's trying to strike with Banshee? She kind of goes through all of the motions with him, the fact that he has lost a great deal of things, bringing up the fact that he lost the X-Vote, bringing up what we just talked about with Moira McTaggart, losing both the true love of his life and also being used by her in the most murderous of ways. And she's very likely going to ask for the same price, for a little bit of faith, a little bit of belief. And this also ties into the overarching themes that Nightcrawler has been going with since Way of X, even since House of X began, where the whole idea was starting a mutant religion, which ultimately devolved into not really developing a mutant religion, but developing just more of a mutant way of life that still centers around a lot of faith for a guy like Kurt Wagner. Before long, she's going to wind up hitting up every single other member of the Legion of X, and I can kind of already tell what are some of the things she's going to try and offer. You look at some of these other characters that are a part of this group, and it's not hard to see what it is she's going to try and give them. You look at characters like Forget-Me-Not. She's probably going to try and give him a way for people to not forget who he is, because even though it has always been a part of his power, it seems like just even only in these first two issues alone, it's already kind of started to bug him a little bit. I would also look at a character like Juggernaut, who on more than a couple of occasions within just these first two issues has kind of lamented not being a part of the gang. Like, yeah, he is a member of the Legion of X. However, he's not treated with the same respect that he might get if he were an actual mutant. Something that makes me wonder if maybe she's going to try and offer him the chance to become exactly that, and that could be a terrible idea in and of itself, not just from a creative standpoint, but just from a character standpoint. I think it could potentially lead to some crazy shenanigans going on, because a lot of people forget that Juggernaut's powers are magical. He is an avatar of Sidorak. Now, some of that has kind of been changed and retooled and remixed, especially since Fabian Icieza's Juggernaut number 1 through 5 from 2020. But in the end, his power still comes from a magical source. So that could be playing with a whole new level of fire that nobody wants to deal with. Characters like Pixie and Lost, I think, are going to be tougher nuts to crack, just because they don't really seem to have anything that they're lacking at the moment that Mother Righteous could potentially give them. Nightcrawler would be another tough nut to crack, just in the sense that I kind of feel like he's already gotten most of the things he's wanted. I mean, he found the spark, he sacrificed himself during Way of X to realize the truth about what he was really searching for. Not the mutant religion, but the spark. So I don't really know what much more she could offer him that he doesn't already have. But considering the Si Spurrier wrote both The Way of X and is also writing this, I'm pretty sure that he's been playing the long game this entire time, and there's something that maybe we just haven't thought about yet. Now, getting over to the whole Skinjacker thing, the mystery of who the Skinjacker was actually cracked in the previous issue. It's a character by the name of Devin Alamar, who some might recall was a member of the New Hellions under the leadership of King Bedlam. This goes all the way back to X-Force Volume 1, number, I think it was 87, 88, somewhere along those lines. The character's mutant name is Switch, and as one would imagine, given what's been going on lately, Switch has the ability to, well, switch his consciousness, his mind, with another person. He can swap his essence into another person and move their essence into his own body, basically doing a Freaky Friday. And the big mystery is, well, why has Switch been running around on Krakoa and taking over mutants' bodies, causing them to mutilate themselves and amputate their own limbs? And we don't really get a straight answer, because as far as Switch wants us to know, there is no real reason. They're just doing it because it's fun. That's what they want us to believe. But the truth of the matter is probably a bit more sinister, because we do learn that Switch has apparently leveled up his repertoire in terms of being able to access and control magic, wielding something called the Hand of Glory, a magical artifact that allows one to open basically anything. Now, there are other instances of the Hand of Glory in the Marvel Comics universe, though those are mostly related to the Asgardian character Hela, though this is not the same thing. But in this case, the Hand of Glory is, for all intents and purposes, a universal skeleton key. This is why he needed Spike's arm in the previous issue. He took it so that he could turn it into a Hand of Glory, because he needed an actual mutant's arm. As we've seen in the past, mutants can be powerful magical reagents. And we even see at another later point in this that when he's taken over the mind of Banshee, hence why Banshee was acting weird and even at some points lost his Scottish accent, when the Legionnaires eventually catch up with him, we see that he's slicing into his own arm. This is because Switch is making him do it. He's trying to make yet another Hand of Glory. Now, the reason why he was trying to break into X-Force HQ was to try and cover his own tracks in regards to the mystery that has surrounded him this entire time, that he is jumping into these different bodies and what he is making them do. He's trying to get rid of any potential surveillance of him doing this. That way, Krakoa as a whole is none the wiser of his actions, even though the Legion is already kind of hot on his trail. We don't really know overall what is his motive behind this. As he says himself, he's just kind of having fun. He's been going around making people cheat on their spouses. He's been making best friends betray one another. He even goes on about how he has infiltrated corporations and turned governments against each other. For the most part, it sounds like he's just causing chaos for chaos' sake. But nothing's ever really that simple. Someone is pulling his strings. And even if someone isn't pulling his strings, someone at the very least has put him up to it. Beyond that, not only has Switch leveled up his powers in terms of having magic at his disposal, but he also seems to have increased how often he can use his mutant powers. Originally, he wasn't able to take over a body more than once, or twice even, in a single 24-hour period, and here we see him jump bodies multiple times. In talking about that, when he takes over Juggernaut's body, one thing that comes up is Juggernaut reveals that wherever it was that he was at, he couldn't tell, but wherever it was very cold and it was very dark, making one wonder where it is exactly he is. I even wonder if maybe he's somewhere in the pit. Now, granted, if that's the case, we probably would have seen him by now in Sabretooth's miniseries, but that's not necessarily the case. Maybe he's just somewhere further deeper down within the pit of Krakoa. It's not that far out of the realm of possibility. Another possibility is that he could probably be buried somewhere. His fate after his time with the New Hellions in X-Force Volume 1 has never really been addressed, so there's a possibility that he probably could have been killed and is just languishing somewhere in a very dark, cold place, the way a dead body normally would. Maybe that's why Kane felt so haunted when he was transferred into Switch's body. It may be due to the fact that while Switch's mind is still alive, maybe his body is actually dead, possibly even buried somewhere nearby. Either way, whatever it is or whoever it is that Switch is working for, I don't think he's 100% going into business for himself. Whatever he's doing right now might even be connected to what's going on with Mother Righteous. It's hard to say at this point, but that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I'm very curious to see what they do with Mother Righteous. It sounds like our suspicions were confirmed that she is the one that Aura Serrata warned Nightcrawler about, the one that he is supposed to seek out and take down. And even though he's been kind of avoiding taking care of this problem in favor of trying to take down the Skinjacker, it seems like he's gonna wind up inevitably crossing paths with Mother Righteous just the same. But anyways, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, I post multiple videos throughout the week breaking down comics and comic book characters. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you tap that bell, that way you don't miss anything. And if you want to learn how and why Krakoa is on a collision course with Black Panther's Wakanda, check out this video right here to find out all about it. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about Legion of X #2, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.